back to our podcast. Today it's me and Dan, and we're going to be talking about is the question of is Montag a good or really bad person in society? I'm going to pass it out to Dan.
So I think Montag is a good person who struggles to make the right choice in life. For the beginning part of his life, he was always told that books were bad, destroy them. He even partakes in destroying them as a firefighter. And as he slowly starts to realize that books are good and that his life is hollow thanks to Clarice, he begins making better and better decisions, revealing his true self that had been suppressed by everything going on around him in life.
Now, I definitely think that we see tons of character development throughout the story. Montag does eventually become a good person. Like he's empathic at the end of the story, but throughout the story he is a little bit selfish. And I know we said that about Favor, who's also a little bit selfish. But for example, Montag was trying to force his wife to do something that she did not want to do, to read books, because he would deep down he was too scared of doing it by himself. If he was caught, he didn't want to be caught alone because he was just lonely.
Yeah, so going off that, I think that, like I said, he struggles to make the right choice in life. He doesn't really understand how to do things the right way because he was never really taught how to do things the right way. I think that he how should I put this? He doesn't understand regular human emotion because he never grew up with that. It was always in his society to suppress that emotion, get the short fix of entertainment, keep moving on, never think critically. So he can't really do that for himself. He has to learn how to do that.
Yeah, and most people also in society don't deal with their emotions. They just use drugs, but I don't think in the story Montag uses drugs like Mildred does. Maybe there's a part of the story I don't know about.
I don't think it was ever mentioned.
It was never mentioned. Yeah, well, Montag is definitely better than some of the people in his society, but when it comes to good and bad, you just because you can have two bad people. Just because someone is worse than the other person, it doesn't make a difference. They're still bad people.
Mm.
Now, I think Montag is a terrible person. I mean, beginning of the story, he was getting like really mad at Clarice for any time she confronted him about like his happiness, for example. He would get really mad. But I mean, throughout the story, like after her death, he does mature a little bit, and I do believe at the end of the story he is a good person. I'll agree with you on that one. But throughout the story, he is a selfish person. I don't think he might be good deep down, and it might have taken a while for him to like reveal it because he just didn't know what it even was. But yeah.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I can see where you're coming from on that. And I think that throughout the book, not only is he a very selfish person, but he's also very reckless. He pulls out a book on the subway, putting him and his wife in danger. He burns the fireman chief, the Yeti, because he's in his way and he threatened Faber, his friend.
Yeah.
And he's just an overall reckless and
threatening his friend Faber. I mean, you can look at it two ways. You can see Montag as a bad person or a good person. He just wouldn't want to save his friend, but he also could have gone about it maybe a different way. But also Montag is like kind of I'll say like narcissist or something. Like he justifies all of his acts because he thinks that he's saving everybody. Like after he meets Faber, he goes back to his house, he sees Mildred. He hoped to show books to her, but instead he saw her friends. But then he started reading. He got sick of them, right? I mean, everyone know it, but he started reading a poem to them, and I mean, I think it was really unfair to their own privacy, but it's looked as because right now he's a protagonist in the story, so everybody's justifying it. He himself is also justifying his acts. So if you look at it from Mildred's point of view and Mildred's friend's point of view, he was a terrible person invading their privacy.
And also forcing them to partake in an actual crime. It'd be like if a DEA agent pulled out a bag of cocaine and said to do it.
Yeah, sure. I think another point in the story where Montag is a little bit selfish is when he talks about is when he like invades Faber's house. Like he goes to Faber begging him and he even starts yelling, being like, please teach me about books, or like I will bring you to the cops if you don't teach me the firemen if you don't teach me about books. But I think that I know Faber ended up helping him, but if in that very moment, Faber definitely felt very threatened by Montag and his actions.
If a man knocked on my door knowing I was doing a crime and said he'd turn me in unless he could join in on that crime, I'd be very concerned and I'd feel very threatened by him. And I probably wouldn't end up helping him.
Yeah, I also I'm gonna go to the end of the story right here just for a second. He is a good person. I mean, you compare him to like the symbol of a phoenix, right? And he's kind of like he can fire kind of like rebirth him, right? He's a whole new person. Fire burned down everything he loved and everything, but it gave him freedom and a whole new life and perspective on life. So at the end of the story, he might be a good person, but at what cost? What had to happen? I mean, maybe it was a good thing that this stuff had to happen because for the better good of society, society is probably gonna be reshaped by him, and like maybe books will come back and stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to what you said about at what cost was his growth as a good person. A whole city was destroyed around him, and that wasn't necessarily his fault. But during the story, it is clear that there's war. Nobody's doing anything about it, and not even Montag. He doesn't even bring it up that much. But in the end of the story, he doesn't really do much to see if there are any people he can try and help or anything either, from what I remember at least.
Yeah. So I mean, we can see the phoenix as a symbol for the firemen, and Montag. Okay, I'm gonna reword what I said earlier. Montag represents the results of fire. I feel like because fire it ruined his life at the beginning. I mean, he loved it at first, but then he started hating. I mean, why are we burning books, right? Why are we burning books? Why are they this important? Why are, like, for example, the old lady, why does she get to die for just her books, right? They can't be that important, right? And fire then leads him to, I already said this, rebirth, a whole rebirth of his whole self, right? He doesn't have his wife anymore. He doesn't have Clarice. He doesn't have Beatty. His society's social stance on him, perspective. For example, maybe one day I wake up and my whole house is gone. Actually, let's say I wake up on an island, right? I don't know anybody there. I don't have any contact in my old life. And no social media, no technology. It's a whole new world for me. But on the bright side, I mean, yeah, maybe I miss my home and everything, but I get to leave everything behind. I mean, I don't want that person in someone like Montag. He didn't have anything left. Mildred was gone. Clarice was gone. I mean, Mildred betrayed him, right? He probably wanted this new whole life, right? So I just really think that him like escaping is leading to him meeting Granger and everybody leads to so much character development and the realization of everything, especially when he hears about his home being nuked by an atomic bomb. I think it leads to a sense of realization there.
The idea is that Bradbury leaves off on, like you said, the character development. We don't even get to see it when he leaves and he starts his new life with Granger and all that. You can only wonder what he'd do in that society and where he'd go, how he would act. You can tell based on how the book ends that obviously he's become a better man and he wouldn't make the same mistakes he had before. But at the same time, it still is open-ended enough where you don't know how his life is going to go. So you're left with this question: will he still be a good person by the end of his life?
So I think if you look through anybody's perspective, you can look through a serial killer's perspective. If you look through somebody's perspective, it's always gonna be a little bit biased, and there's gonna be they're gonna look like a protagonist in their own point of view. If you're gonna look at it from someone like Beatty, Mildred's friend's point of view, look through their eyes. You see Montag through his intentions and actions, terrible guy. Like reading on a subway, screaming at people, invading people's people's privacy, just invading Faber's home.
Forcing people to partake in crime with him.
Yeah, force people to partake in crime with him. It's just really bad. And I think we're going to pick up on this in our next episode.